Imagine waking up one day and realizing that a foreign government quietly owns the farmland that grows your food, the port that moves your goods, and the mountain that holds your country's water supply. Now, what if I told you this isn't a hypothetical? This is already happening in dozens of countries right now, and most people have absolutely no idea. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most ambitious and quietly executed land acquisition strategies in modern history. By the end of this video, you'll see the world map very differently. Let's start with a number that should make you stop and think. Over the last 2 decades, China has acquired or leased land in more than 40 countries across Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and even Europe and the Pacific Islands. We're not talking about small plots. We're talking about millions of hectares of farmland in Zambia, deep-water ports in Sri Lanka and Greece, entire islands in the Pacific, and critical mining zones sitting on top of the world's most valuable minerals: cobalt, lithium, rare earth elements. Now here's the question most people skip right past. Why land? China is already the second largest economy on Earth. What does it need land for? That's exactly what we're going to break down. And the answer is far more calculated than most governments want to admit. But before we get there, we need to understand something that happened almost 30 years ago. A quiet decision made inside Beijing that set all of this in motion. In the late 1990s, China's leadership identified what they called their 3 great vulnerabilities: food security, energy dependency, and resource scarcity. China has 1.4 billion people to feed, but only about 9% of the world's arable land. And that land is shrinking, poisoned by decades of industrial overuse. At the same time, China's economy was growing at a rate that demanded more oil, more copper, more lithium, more of everything than its own territory could supply. So the plan wasn't loud. It wasn't announced at summits or printed in headlines. It was methodical, patient, and global. The strategy had a name you've probably heard: the Belt and Road Initiative. But here's what most people miss about it. The roads and ports are just the surface. Underneath every infrastructure deal is almost always a land agreement, a resource lease, or a debt arrangement that Beijing can call in whenever it wants. And that's where it gets really interesting. Here's how the playbook works. And pay attention, because once you see this pattern, you'll notice it everywhere. China approaches a developing nation. Let's say a small African country rich in cobalt or sitting on a strategic coastline. It offers a generous loan to build a road, a railway, or a port. The country accepts. The construction begins. Chinese workers, Chinese materials, Chinese companies, all brought in. Then, a few years later, the country can't repay the loan. And instead of restructuring the debt, China offers something else: a 99-year lease on the infrastructure it just built. This is exactly what happened in Sri Lanka in 2017, when the country handed over the Hambantota port to a Chinese company for 99 years. Not unlike the kind of colonial land deals made by European empires centuries ago. But it didn't stop there. In Zambia, concerns grew that Chinese creditors had their eyes on the national electricity company as collateral. In Djibouti, a tiny country sitting at one of the world's most important maritime choke points, China built its first overseas military base, right next to a US base, both sides watching each other. This is not random. These locations are chosen with extraordinary precision. If you look at a map of China's land and port acquisitions, something jumps out immediately. They're not scattered. They form a chain that controls shipping lanes, river systems, food production zones, and mineral corridors. Take the Pacific Islands. Countries like the Solomon Islands, Kiribati, and Vanuatu. Most people couldn't find them on a map, but they sit directly between China and the United States' key military installations in Guam and Hawaii. In 2022, China signed a security agreement with the Solomon Islands that sent shockwaves through Washington and Canberra. The agreement could allow Chinese naval ships to be stationed there. Think about what that means geographically for a moment. Then look at Africa, where China has poured over $150 billion in investments, quietly locking in access to the largest deposits of critical minerals on the planet. Cobalt from the Congo, lithium from Zimbabwe, oil from Angola and South Sudan. These aren't just business deals. They're pieces of a much larger game, a game with rules most Western governments are only now beginning to understand. Here's the part that almost never makes the news. And in many ways, it's the most alarming. China is the world's largest buyer of farmland abroad. In 2022, a Chinese company purchased nearly 300 acres of agricultural land in North Dakota, less than 20 miles from Grand Forks Air Force Base, a critical U.S. military installation. The U.S. government scrambled. Congress held emergency hearings. The deal was eventually blocked. But for every deal that gets blocked, how many go unnoticed? In Brazil, Chinese entities have acquired millions of hectares in the Cerrado, the agricultural heartland of South America. In Australia, Chinese investors have been quietly snapping up cattle stations and water rights in remote areas for over a decade. And in Ukraine, before the war, Chinese companies had already secured long-term leases on some of the most fertile farmland in Europe. The common thread? Whoever controls the food supply holds the most powerful leverage of all. Now, it would be unfair to pretend this is entirely one-sided. Some of these investments have genuinely helped developing nations build infrastructure they desperately needed. Some of the debt trap narratives have been overstated, and Western nations have their own long history of acquiring foreign resources under unfavorable terms. But what makes this moment different is the scale and the speed. China is playing a 50 to 100-year game. Most Western governments are thinking in 4-year election cycles. That asymmetry matters. Because the land being acquired today, the ports, the farmland, the mineral deposits, will determine who holds leverage in a world increasingly defined by resource scarcity, climate disruption, and technological competition. The pieces are already on the board. The question is whether the rest of the world is paying attention. And maybe that's the most unsettling thing of all. This isn't a conspiracy. It's not hidden. It's happening in public documents, signed agreements, and satellite images that anyone can see. The strategy is quiet not because it's secret, but because most people simply aren't looking. Now you are. If this video made you think differently about how power actually moves in the world, hit that subscribe button. Every week, we break down the geopolitical stories that shape your reality, the ones that don't make the front page but absolutely should. I'll see you in the next one.